From Capital News, Illinois, welcome to a special edition of Capital Cast, Election 26. This is our first episode in a series of podcasts focusing on the upcoming March 17th primary election. These episodes will feature in-depth interviews with candidates seeking major party nominations in contested primaries for statewide office. Today's interview is with Holly Kim, a Democrat running for Illinois comptroller. Ms. Kim is currently the Lake County Treasurer. CNI reporters Ben Solinsky and Brendan Moore spoke with Ms. Kim on Thursday, January 22nd. Here now is that interview.
Thank you, Lake County Treasurer Holly Kim, for joining us. Just to start, why do you want the job, and why do you have the right experience to do this job?
Sure. Thanks, first of all, for having me here. My name is Holly Kim, and I have the honor of serving 2 terms as Lake County Treasurer. I'm someone who's running for Illinois State Comptroller with a background in extreme hardship. Actually, I grew up having a kid in college, and I had to shift gears and work full-time while going to school part-time and juggling a kid, signing up for WIC, Medicaid, the Head Start program. And it took me 8.5 years to crawl across that finish line to get my degree, but I did it. And when it rains, it pours, because about that same time, I had a relative who stole my identity and absolutely trashed my credit to the ground. And so going from that to 23 years later, being the treasurer for 2 terms in Lake County, Illinois, the 3rd largest county, where I'm in charge of billions of dollars with a B, and all the checks go out with my name on it, which means out of 4 people running, I'm already doing the controller job. I'm definitely going to be a fierce protector of people and their money. And I think that's really why I'm the best person for this job.
Now, Holly, you're the only one who is not a current state lawmaker running in this race. Do you feel like that puts you at a disadvantage in any way?
So I think traditionally people would think that someone, in a countywide race can't run for statewide, but I'd like to believe that anyone, a school board member, a library board, anyone could run for statewide if their heart's in the right place and they have the tools to do it. One of the things that we've done is straight out the gate, went to Southern Illinois, and I do a lot of grassroots hoofing it. And so I've met people face to face. We have a lot of support from Democratic county chairs across the state of Illinois. I have over 30 endorsements, and that's almost a third of the whole entire state of Illinois. Various hundreds of elected officials all across the state as well, and different groups like Indivisible, Niles, Maine Township just came out with their endorsement of me. And so what I may lack in corporate and Springfield money, I make up for in grassroots support across the state of Illinois. And we have over 500 volunteers who are doing the phone calls, door knocking, and helping us to win across the state.
And I guess to that point, Holly, every candidate brings something different to an unelected role, and can kind of put their own spin on it. So I guess we're curious what you view this role of comptroller as. Is it more of an administrative position, just getting the checks out on time, or is this one where you'll be pushing policy goals in the legislature? And if you can explain that.
Yeah, so for me, I actually come from a background of changing government and reform. Going through that extreme hardship, my lens is tilted towards changing government so it works for not only working class, but people who are 2 paychecks away from nothing. And the examples I'll give you is, in 2013, I first ran for village government because I wanted to have pet chickens and my town didn't allow it. This is the lore of the village of Mundelein, and how I got started. And in being a village trustee, I actually taught people how to appeal their assessments, keep a little money in their pockets for groceries, how to run for office, know your rights. I taught all sorts of things to the village in an information sharing sort of a way, because I'm all about tangibly giving back to the community. So in the township, when I was over at Vernon Township, we physically converted the boardroom and took out the dais and the wood and all the pictures of the old supervisors and put in refrigerators, freezers, and shelves, and made it a shopping cart food pantry. Because I argued that we only have a board meeting 1 hour every month, but people have food needs every day. And the board agreed to do it. And so I'm very proud of that. Again, that's a tangible change people can see, touch, and feel, and it benefits the community. And as county treasurer, I changed how we invested as well. I updated our investment policy to match the state of Illinois because it was outdated when I first got in there. And I brought in all the investment firms and told them, look, I'm not here to play golf with you. And I know, it's usually relationship based, but for me in my generation, I'm someone who hops in a car with a stranger to get a ride from point A to point B, and I'm results oriented. So in that same way, you need to produce as investment firms. And I pitted them against each other like Survivor Island. I stacked them all and said the two lowest producing, I'm going to take your money and give it to the others. Well, I'm very proud to say from the day I got there to where I am now, the investment returns are over 200% from the previous treasurer. And I even found a way to negotiate higher interest on one of our checking accounts where the property taxes go through. And that was like $3.2 billion in property taxes. And I negotiated it from 1.75 to 4% interest. And so I was able to give $3.2 million back to my community, which is pretty unheard of. And there's even a school out there, because I gave it back to the schools, the parks, the libraries, and taxing bodies. There's a school who received $140,000 they never asked for. But I think that's really what I bring when I go to the controller's office, is not so much anything that people are used to. It's that I'm going to go in to deliver reform in tangible ways that will benefit people. And one of the examples I can give right off the top of my head is, using something like DocuSign. If you have to drive in either to the Chicago or the Springfield office to wet sign something, that's already, as Alexi Janulius would call it, the time tax. And if I can close on a house entirely using DocuSign without stepping foot into a building, why can't we do something like that for our residents and save them time, and the gas money? And so I'm looking for tangible ways to change this office to make it better for the people. I do have a three-point plan. I don't know if this is where you want me to elaborate in it or later, but
Please go ahead.
yeah. So one of my priorities definitely is there's nothing wrong with wanting to do the job. I'm big on process mapping, getting rid of waste and inefficiency, but also beefing up our cybersecurity. This is the office where, millions of checks come out of this office, but the number one scam is acid washing the to line and putting in a different name, right? And those are flagged even at my office as county treasurer. So you want to make sure that this office that's in charge of billions of dollars is going to be very secure for the money that it's sitting on. Also, software implementation. Like I said, this isn't the sexy part of anything, but it needs to be done. And I think that is one of my specialties in bringing the office, up to where it should be in 2025. As county treasurer, I digitized work, so my staff was able to work from home 2 days a week, right? Isn't that something I'd love for the staff of the controller's office to enjoy? But also, let's see here. So part two would be, this office is known for its prevailing wage department. In fact, it is a thought leader across the nation. And so we need to make sure with all these data centers and solar farms that are popping up that we remain proactive in controlling our hand on that spigot to turn it off when state projects do not pay the legal prevailing wage. And currently, I think they're understaffed. Going around in person around the whole state, I've noticed that all unions have regions, but we only have about like 2 people working in this department in the controller's office. So I'd really like to beef that up to have regions. Thirdly, I think now is a great time for someone who is a privacy rights advocate to be in this office. When I was a village trustee and they wanted to roll out license plate readers, I made them follow all the rules of the ACLU at my village. And so here you have the controller's office that has over 100,000, pensioners data. You have 60,000 staff of the state of Illinois data in there. And anytime you or I ever filed our taxes and received a tax refund, all of our privacy data is in there. And right now, with all the federal mega overreach that's happening, you see even Kwame Raoul is suing the federal government because they're going after license plate information or personal data regarding people who are crossing state lines or for ICE. And so now more than ever, we need someone who's going to stand up to the federal government.
So to put it pretty simply, the comptroller in the Constitution at a bare bones level is the job is to pay the bills. But you sound like you're someone who kind of envisions the role of that office in reforming state government a little bit more than just paying the bills.
I definitely have a reputation and receipts in different forms of government of tangibly changing it to be better for the people. And I think that is my mission, in government. And I think that's something people want nowadays.
Yeah, and you or any of the other candidates for this office are going to be succeeding somebody who's been in that role for a decade, Susana Mendoza. What's your assessment of her performance in that job, and what, if anything, will you do differently?
So I've been blessed that Susanna Mendoza herself has been my work mentor the last 7 years. And I first got to see her on the scene when I didn't know her as this, scrappy lady who's punching up at the 6 foot, Bruce Rauner. And I was like, wow, well, scrappy is really the right word. And when I got to know her professionally and she became my work mentor, as like we're both ladies in finance, I grew an appreciation for her credit upgrades. She received 10 credit upgrades for the state of Illinois, which allows us to borrow at a really good rate. And I think that's going to come into play and be really important as Trump is cutting federal funding, right? And we have to wonder how we're going to pay for these. If there's any loans that the state of Illinois wants to or bonds that they want to float, this is where the interest, comes in handy, having good credit ratings. I think there's still more that this office can do. Again, protecting our prevailing wage department is going to be very important with that boom that's happening right now in data centers. And it's not just one at a time. They're just kind of all happening at the same time. And I think we see that in all of our village meetings. I do think that one of the benefits I come with is that I have experience at the village, the township, and the county level. I've been able to see, how this office interacts, the controller's office interacts with various forms of different government and have that lens of understanding. But as a human being, when I was using the Medicaid program, that was called All Kids back then, and I would come with my All Kids card to take my kids to pediatricians. I got to experience firsthand how when pediatricians stop taking the program, you have to go further and further away. And right after I graduated college, I did have a stint working at a doctor's office that did take Illinois Medicaid, and I got to do the billing myself. And I noticed that at some point when the appropriation bucket is empty, how the cash flow stops as well. So then, it was like a complete circle in my brain of, oh, no wonder then that pediatric dentist, stopped taking it and you had to go 40 miles out to another town. And I got to see firsthand how it affects people when the state controller's office does not reimburse timely. And so that's why I think it's very important that someone who's experienced is in this role.
Now, there's been this kind of perennial question around the office of if it should merge with the treasurer's office. What's your opinion on that?
So I actually Googled a lot to read a lot about it and think about it. Copious hours. We could probably have a fireside chat and a whole nother show podcast just on that one. But my understanding is it was a merged office in the past. And in the 1960s, someone was in there who embezzled and did fraud. Hence, it was separated, right? And there's a lot of good people who are still alive now who lived during that time, and they're not going to want to see a merged office. My question usually to the people is I hear you in what you're trying to say about efficiency, but what it comes to is public trust. And I don't think we've reached a point yet where people have come on an answer of what would be a check and a balance enough for that office to merge and not be in that situation ever again. So for right now, the solution is separating it so a different person is a check and a balance. And I'm very independently minded. I'm not funded by the special interests, by corporate PACs. I'm funded by the people. I have almost 1,000 donations averaging $200 or less, and I'm very proud of that. I think what this office needs is an independently minded fiscal watchdog to carry that baton forward that Susanna Mendoza is graciously passing on.
You may have already touched upon some of these, but obviously the controller's office has oversight duties beyond budgeting, including investigating fraud in local government to regulating cemeteries. What is one of those maybe under the radar responsibilities that you would prioritize and why?
I love that about this office, by the way. As I've been campaigning around the state of Illinois, we go and pull over to get B-roll at various cemeteries everywhere because people are not aware that this office does regulate cemeteries, crematoriums as well. And so I think, one of the benefits I come with is that I can live stream. I go on podcasts and make explanation videos. And this is a data-heavy office where people don't realize a lot of what it does or all the data that it has. It's interesting because there are other people who are running for this office that want to put this or that or blah, blah, blah on the website. There's a ton of info on the website. The problem is government doesn't have really good short explanation videos that are snacks. And that's where we all are right now. And I think having more snack videos of information of what's in the controller's office will help people to, number one, trust government and understand through transparency, right? In those explanation videos. We just don't have those, and I'd love to make them. And as you say, people don't know that this office regulates cemeteries and crematoriums, but also that it works on audits for local municipalities. And I want to touch on that for a sec, as someone who not only came from a municipality, but also a township. 43% of the taxing bodies are not compliant with the audits that this office needs. And I had a great conversation with TOI, which is the Township Officials of Illinois, and IML, both of which I used to be a member of, to try and figure out, because I'm one of these people who are not about putting Band-Aids on symptoms. I need for us to tackle the disease. And so we're looking at the verbiage of what we need to change in the state, in like what their requirements of audits are, so that maybe comprehensively they could just do one audit that would apply for, all of them. And so I think that would save a lot of money to municipalities, right? Thereby hopefully reducing taxes for the people. And that's the thing, is I'm very solutions oriented.
So Illinois' rainy day fund currently has about $2.4 billion in it, which only covers about 2 weeks of operating expenses for the state. A lot of fiscal experts recommend a lot more closer to a month, I believe. I guess, how much should the state be setting aside for reserves, and, what priority should that have in future budgeting decisions?
So me coming from a background of someone who deals in money and has same kind of reserves over at the county, I don't want people touching it. Once the hand starts coming, get out of there, because every single topic is going to be like, well, what about the rainy day funds? Well, the rainy day funds have barely existed for, long enough to, as you say, it only lasts about a week. So what are they going to do? Rate it and then crash our, credit rating so that when we borrow, we have higher interest, and that doesn't work for taxpayers, right? So I would definitely be against people rating the rainy day funds in the state that it's in. It doesn't have enough in it for, us to rate it. But that, secondly, again, I'm more about solutions and curing the disease than going after symptoms. And this is where I would advocate for not only the progressive tax to be brought up as a longer term solution, especially with years of rocky finances headed our way, with Trump still in government for the next 3 years. We need more long-term solutions.
I guess, one of the things lawmakers did in this current year's budget is they suspended the nearly $4 million monthly transfer from the general revenue fund to the rainy day fund. Certainly saved the state some money, balancing the budget this year. But I guess if you, had some sort of control over that, should lawmakers restore that funding stream on a monthly basis?
I think I'm a realist, and where we're headed right now with Trump, I'd be glad if there is anything for the rainy day fund, but I would also totally understand if they did not, because look at what we're dealing with. We're dealing with budget holes already, and people wondering how we're going to pay in lieu of the federal reimbursements not coming.
And you mentioned financial troubles ahead relating to the Trump administration, the federal government, but also Illinois, as you know, has had longstanding fiscal issues, and a lot of it centers around the pension situation in the state. I guess, do you have any thoughts on how the comptroller can help address the state's pension problems?
At best, what I've seen and researched is that when they can make an early payment, here and there where they can, it's just like paying a mortgage early, right? The sooner you pay, the less you'll pay overall. Also, in doing so, she received credit upgrades, for the state of Illinois. And I think this is one of those jobs where you can't be flash in the pan and be reactionary. And it really is about long-term financial planning. And so if credit upgrades is what's going to help the state of Illinois with the long-term pension issue, then that's something that's within the control of the controller's office. And, I would agree with, when possible, doing the early payments. But like I said, I don't think anyone who's running for this office right now thinks it's going to be smooth roads ahead. And that's where someone experienced, such as myself, a weathered sea captain, being a treasurer during a time of COVID, when I literally had mayors calling me asking how they were going to get money to pay for, their police, fire, and municipal needs when there's no sales happening, and it was really a rough time. And that's where I think the difference is too. You have myself running and legislators, but I'm the only one who's had financial experience and that oversight for billions of dollars directly under my hand, and weathering through some really bad storms.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the credit rating issue. That's obviously something Suzanne Mendoza has been very proud of to receive under her 10 years. I guess going forward, what else should the state be doing to improve its credit rating?
So I had a couple of different thoughts, but I think honestly, the next few years are going to be the tumultuous times, and it probably is more about maintaining than moving things upwards. Again, I would go more towards solutions based, which is like passing the progressive tax, having billionaires pay their fair share, and if we could fill the budget holes and the gaps that we have right now, we probably could increase our credit rating as well. I believe right now it's at an A-. We still have a couple of steps we could go upwards.
Very good. Well, thank you, Lake County Treasurer Holly Kim, for joining us, and good luck with your campaign.
Thanks for having me.
That was Lake County Treasurer Holly Kim, a Democratic candidate for Illinois comptroller. And this has been a special edition of Capital Cast, Election 26. Capital Cast is a production of Capital News Illinois, a public affairs reporting project of the Illinois Press Foundation, with funding from the Robert R. McCormick Foundation. Stay tuned here for more candidate interviews and coverage of the March 17, 2026 primaries.